What would you do for beauty? Starve yourself, cover your skin in powders, whisper prayers to mirrors. But would you kill? Would you slaughter girls? Dozens at first, then hundreds, all so you could slide into a steaming bath that ran red with their blood. Behind velvet curtains and stone walls, wealth gave cover to horror. Servants bowed, courtiers smiled, and in the heart of a fortress, a noble woman stared at her reflection while the bodies piled high. Her name was whispered in taverns, etched in testimony, buried in rumour. Erzsébet Bathory, the countess who believed that youth could be stolen drop by drop, vein by vein. For years, the secret nearly remained hidden, until the machine she built to feed her vanity began to crack. To understand how the slaughter factory began, you have to see where she learned to applaud pain. She was born into a lattice of titles and iron, land spread like a velvet map beneath her family's boots, gold threaded through their treaties. Proximity to thrones made their words law and their whims weather. The Bathory name carried a reputation that travelled faster than riders. Order, yes. Mercy, rarely. Their rule was praised in courts and feared in kitchens. Childhood sounded like steel on stone. The courtyard became a stage where punishments taught lessons. Thieves knelt in frost. Rebels swung before noon bells. Executions were not accidents. They were policy. The girl learned to walk past them without flinching. She held a sweet in her mouth and watched. She studied not the rope, but the faces. How fear hardened, how hope thinned, how silence finally lay down. Curiosity turned inward. What made pain bend a person? How long until pride cracked? She practiced small cruelties that looked like discipline. A servant dropped a ladle. The servant was made to kneel on peas and recite prayers until the knees bled. The girl listened for the rhythm of sobs and stored it like a tune. Marriage chained wealth to weapons. A husband in uniform arrived with scars and trophies. He taught her the difference between a strike that bruises and a strike that breaks. He showed her knots that held but did not choke. He explained cold, that it exhausts quicker than hunger. These were not recipes, they were techniques. She thanked him like a pupil. They moved often to a remote fortress that sat like a clenched fist above forests and fields. Winter dragged its nails across the walls. Snow filled the mouths of statues. The road narrowed, then vanished into pines. Orders travelled outward, witnesses travelled nowhere. The castle learned to swallow sound. Power multiplied in isolation. Letters took weeks. Priests came when summoned and left with coins. The household staff lived inside a circle of unquestioned commands. A mistake was a spectacle. The girl who watched faces became a woman who tested them. When war took her husband from the castle, it also removed the last guardrail. A plate slipped from a maid's trembling hand. Porcelain cracked on stone. For anyone else, a moment of clumsiness. For her, an experiment. Hours of agony measured the price of a dish. What began as discipline twisted into design. The staff became captives. There was no recourse, no higher court, no distance from her reach. Punishments no longer corrected, they observed. A lash was counted. A scream was timed. A silence was noted. She recorded what broke bodies quickest and what prolonged them longest. The fortress, once a home, turned laboratory. Her hunger widened. Promises went out to peasants. Daughters would serve, learn, be fed. Families, desperate for coin or safety, handed them over. The gates closed, and silence swallowed their names. Geography conspired with cruelty. The castle stood encircled by forests, hills, and guards whose loyalty was sharpened with gold. Escape routes collapsed into snowdrifts, into wolf-haunted woods, into dungeons. Girls vanished into walls that never gave them back. Each device was adjusted like a craftsman tuning an instrument. She tested spikes, heat, cold water poured over bare skin in midwinter. She tracked resilience, resistance, surrender. Every sound became data, every death a lesson. The castle's echo was no longer prayers but screams woven into its stone. But pain alone wasn't the point. She was chasing something colder and far more enduring. It began with a smear. A servant struck in anger, a scratch blooming red across pale skin. Blood on the countess's hand. She rubbed it, and in the mirror swore the spot looked smoother. The spark caught. Belief took root. Beauty could be stolen. Youth could be preserved. Discipline became ritual. The castle built new rooms, tiled and sealed. Tubs dragged in, heated stones stacked to keep water steaming, victims suspended so the blood fell warm, collected in copper basins before cooling. Mirrors flanked the chamber, angled to flatter, servants trained to confirm what she demanded. That she looked younger, that she glowed. The rites expanded. She mixed blood with wine, pressed it to her lips as cure, as shield. The age of victims narrowed. Younger girls, she decided, carried purity, fresher essence. Schedules tightened. Hunts for new bodies accelerated. Precision ruled the slaughter. Bathing had to be immediate, the temperature exact. She timed the flow, noted texture, directed attendance with the calm of a physician and the hunger of a predator. Superstitions of the age elixirs, charms, recipes whispered by crones were folded into her practice, legitimizing her obsession. Each reflection became a judgment. Each wrinkle, a threat. She believed she was not cruel but clever, not monstrous but chosen. Vanity locked her mind like iron bars. She built rituals, then she built protection, an armor of titles, coins, and fear. Her family name was a fortress stronger than stone. Complaints did not read as cries for justice. They became property disputes, petty quarrels, gossip from peasants, rank transmuted screams into whispers, then into nothing. Bribes spread like oil. Officials accepted coin for silence. Priests received donations heavy enough to distract from blood. Investigators were warned, then vanished. Fear thickened the air. Those who served her closely knew too much to run. Those who served her distantly heard just enough to dread. Loyalty was purchased with land, titles, and safety. Accomplices prospered. Dissenters were broken. A single hesitation could mean being pulled into the same chamber as the girls. Survival meant compliance. The castle swallowed bodies as well as voices, graves hidden in fields, corpses rolled into rivers, bones left in forests where wolves finished the work. Records disappeared, names were erased. Families learned not to ask. But mistakes multiply in shadows. Her victims shifted, no longer just daughters of peasants who vanished unnoticed, now daughters of minor nobility, girls whose absences echoed in courts and halls. When the whispers reached the palace, a cousin came knocking, not with condolences, but soldiers. They came without warning. Soldiers marched through snow, their torches a jagged trail of fire. The gates creaked, the doors shattered, and the castle bled its secrets. Rooms still wet with evidence. Devices still warm. Survivors barely breathing, their eyes hollowed by terror. The spectacle should have ended with her chained in the square, burned before a crowd. But politics is its own executioner. Her accomplices were offered up instead. Servants dragged to pyres, flames licking the night. She, the lady of rank, was spared the public blaze. Her punishment was quieter, but no less final. Bricked inside her own fortress, she became her last prisoner. Stone walls sealed her away. The echo chamber of screams went silent. Years passed. Then only rumours slipped through cracks. Her legend grew sharper than fact. Tales of a vampiric countess spread, feeding myths that outlived her bones. But behind the stories lay a colder truth. Power insulated cruelty. Title delayed justice. Status kept the blade from her throat. Her afterlife is not in folklore. It is in the warning she carved. Beauty worshipped as power, pain disguised as ritual, privilege masking murder. Remember her whenever the powerful walk free. What other monsters are hiding in plain sight? Subscribe to unseal the doors they keep closed.